So this graph explains why people quit right before they win. It's from a tiny book by Seth Godin called The Dip. You can read it in an hour, maybe a couple of hours, but it took me years to actually understand what was going on. And I wish I had read about this book earlier. Now, every business, every YouTube channel, every skill you've ever tried to learn, they all follow this exact curve. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can start seeing it everywhere. Assalamu alaikum, and my name is Iqbal, and today I'm going to be talking about the dip. So the dip explained. Now this whole book is about this one graph. So you have effort on one axis, which is along the bottom, and then you have your results on the other side, which is down here. And here's the truth, everything is controlled by the dip. Think about the last time you started something new, a new hobby, a new project, like anything. So at the beginning, as you can see this hump here, you're very excited. So this is the sort of excited phase. But then afterwards, you're not seeing the results that you want to see. And then you kind of hit what Seth Godin calls the dip. And it's about working through this dip, which is super important. And it's like, when people say they're going to go to the gym in January, like every year. So they start off really good, but then they maybe see a few results at the start. But afterwards, as they keep going to the gym, they're not seeing those quick results. But it's just about staying through it and trying to work through that dip. Yeah, it's like a slog, the results flatten out, the excitement dies. You feel like you're putting in a lot of energy, but you're not getting much back. And for most meaningful things, the slog isn't weeks, it's like years of experimenting. And that was a big realization for me, because I used to think, oh yeah, I'll be able to get this YouTube thing going in a few months and I'll be, right up there. But no, it takes so much longer. Making content just takes a lot of tweaking, a lot of failing, a lot of trying again. And then if you survive, you get the thing everyone calls overnight success. Except you and I both know that nothing overnight about it at all. Here's the thing that changed it for me. The dip is not a sign you're failing. It means that you're actually in the right path. It's a natural way to work. YouTube and content creation was easy. Everyone would do it. Everyone would be successful. But the dip is what makes people stop. And that brings us to where I felt this most painfully, and that's being a content creator. Now, let me be honest with you, if you see my channel, I've sort of started and stopped loads and loads of times. I also had 2 YouTube channels at one time where I don't even know why, where I couldn't even get one going. So I had another channel called Simple Muslim Money, which is about finance advice and stuff like that. And then I had this channel where I was talking about languages and productivity and this sort of stuff for Muslims. I posted a few videos, I got excited, and then, I wasn't seeing results. And then it just felt like a hard slog. And then I'd stop for a bit and then just kind of repeat. And I wasn't failing because my videos were bad. I wasn't, failing because of the algorithm. It's purely because I was in this kind of dip. So I went to this great event called Creator Live with Jun Yu and Shan Hanif, and they're they run this thing called Creator College, which is amazing. And they were kind of talking about at what point do creators fail. And basically a lot of them fail is really around, they start here, they get a bit excited, they come down, this is when they fail. So they fail at this bit of the dip. So what's really important is just to kind of keep working and trying to get to here. And this is where you get compounding. So you kind of get a little bit of growth and then suddenly it can just shoot up. But this, can take a whole bunch of time. And this taught me what I needed to know. Basically, I was failing at the dip. And that's what I've realized now, is that I needed to kind of keep trying to work through that dip so that I could get to this kind of compounding stage. And I saw this great video with Ali Abdal and Matt Diavella, who are 2 really big YouTubers. And one thing Ali said in that video was that the biggest risk to a content creator is not making content. So, the moment you stop making content, that's when, things will not start to grow and you won't start to, do well. It's not bad thumbnails, it's not low views, simply just not pressing record. So every time you stop, that dip resets. So that means that you might have been here and you just had to kind of work through. But if you stopped at this point, the next time you start, you're kind of doing that dip all over again. So how do creators fall for the dip? So problem 1 is just quitting way too early. The first problem is the obvious one. If we just don't stick to things long enough, then we're not going to compound. So if we go back to the dip graph, if we kind of we get here and then we kind of lose motivation and we're not seeing results, we just need to kind of stick to it to get to that compounding stage. So Alex Hormozi has this line that he keeps telling himself whenever he goes through something hard, and it's really just beautifully simple. And it's basically this mantra or affirmation he says to himself, which is, I will not fail if I do not quit. So if you read that again, that's the only guaranteed way to fail, and that is to stop. Learning a language is a great example of this. I've tried learning lots of languages and I'm currently learning Arabic, and nobody fails at Arabic because it's impossible. They fail because they stopped showing up. So what's the fix? And the fix is just to make it easy, not too difficult. So yeah, if you go to the dip, it's about, everyone gets excited learning a language at first, but then when you get to this bit, that's where they sort of struggle. You're not seeing much results, but it's just about kind of working through it. And the way to work through it is just by making it really, really easy. Doing 10 minutes a day beats 2 hours, like, you know, once in a while. However, the twist is that sticking to something isn't always the answer. Sometimes it can be a trap. Because the second problem is sneakier, doing the wrong thing for a very long time. I've done that. I've started loads of businesses before. I've done this like t-shirt business, Amazon business, done like eBay, I've done drop shipping. And on paper, they made sense. Like you can make money and potentially you can make it quite quickly. But deep down, they were not what I wanted to do. You know, I was grinding for a dip on the path that I didn't want to be on. So in order to get through the dip, you need to be on something that you really believe in, something that you really want to do. And there's this great concept, Simon Sinek, he writes, you know, a lot of books and stuff like that. And one is called infinite games and finite games. Finite games is a game that has an end point. For example, either you're working somewhere just for the money, or, you know, you want to move to somewhere else, or you're playing a game and you just want to play the game to the end. Once you've hit the target, then you stop. An infinite game is something that you want to keep playing forever. And that's how I feel about content creation. You know, it's something I want to do for like a long time. And I love this kind of concept that comes from like Kobe Bryant, and I've heard it like from a few other founders. Big founders say this as well. You know, the reward of doing the work is more work. You know, the reason you do the work is so you can see some results. And when you see some results, it then lets you do more work. You can become more of a creator. So you don't want to be playing a game that you don't want to do. Here's like another example in my own work. So I'm a software engineer and I used to work on a lot of software in the back end. So this is like services, and it does like a lot of logic-y sort of stuff, and it probably, you know, connects to some sort of database. But what I really loved doing was the front end. So this is where you're designing like web pages. You know, you get to be kind of creative. You're doing HTML, doing CSS, you're doing JavaScript. I love that whole kind of creative side. And usually you have a front end that calls the back end. And yeah, I remember I was doing some sort of back end work, but I kind of really didn't kind of enjoy it. Whereas the front end stuff, I was really enjoying it. And you know, that's something I really sort of like working on. So I'm more likely to do better if I'm doing something that I enjoy, as opposed to something that, you know, maybe pays the bill and does really well, but not something that I enjoy as much. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, talks about this, where he says, you know, he wanted to be an author. So anything he does successful has to fit in within that frame, within being an author. Just because he's a big author doesn't mean he should suddenly go and start a podcast, or suddenly go and start a YouTube channel, or suddenly start selling something that, you know, he doesn't want to be aligned with what he really wants to do, what he really enjoys doing. But another thing I love is this quote from Tim Grover from his book Relentless, and it is like, you know, he worked with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and he spoke about how, you know, how you love the results so much you don't care about the process that gets you there. So one of the things I used to get hung up on is like, oh my gosh, do I really enjoy being a content creator? Sometimes it feels like work, you know, why isn't it always like happy, and should be like, you know, this is something that I enjoy doing. But yeah, nothing's like that. Nothing's like where you're just gonna enjoy it all the time. Like I'm sure Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, they probably hated a lot of training sessions, but because they had that goal in mind where they wanted to win the championship, that is what made them want to go through that training, that hard training, waking up early and, you know, traveling and all that sort of stuff. And another really good thing on High Out from the Creator Live event was they spoke about, you know, if you want to be a social media influencer, content creator, whatever it is, in order to be one, you need to have that strong why. And that's another way to kind of help you push through the dip. So, you know, what is your why? Is it working for yourself? You know, having some freedom? Is it being able to support your family, whatever it is? So yeah, that's another thing that's like really important to kind of work through this dip. But here's a really interesting thing, which is that the dip is your friend. You know, the dip is what forces you to kind of learn and set up systems, you know, try and figure things out. There's another great book called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, and the core idea of this is that you're actually really the most happiest when you actually kind of go through some sort of discomfort and work towards something. Our lives are so, you know, we've got phones, we've got air conditioning in our cars, we could drive anywhere, you know, we could just order food from an app on your phone, but like actually like working towards something and going through some challenge and stuff like that, within the right balance, can actually be like really good for you. Another way the dip becomes your friend is like this forces you to think about how to make videos more efficient, how to be better at doing things and pick up the new skills and learn new stuff. Like one of the things I did was, you know, I've now kind of building this system. So, you know, where I will write the script for my video, and then I have a editor who will kind of edit the video, and then we have a system to kind of put it on YouTube. And then, you know, I probably wouldn't have done this if I wasn't going through the dip and, you know, I had to kind of figure out the system and stuff like that. But the dip is what made me kind of do this and build this system to try and make things easier for me. Because once you have the system in place, it will kind of help you work through this dip. So you want to make it as easy as possible so you can kind of get through that dip, and having a system just makes it so much easier. So the dip acts as a barrier as well. You know, if the barrier wasn't there, we'd all value the prize a lot less. And if something's very easy to get, then, you know, no one's going to kind of value it, which means the game is often simpler than we think. And I remember hearing this quote from, I can't remember who it was, in one of Ali Abdaal's video, and it was talking about the last man standing, which is like, all you want to do is, in order, like, if you want to beat anyone out there, just try and stay in the game longer than like anyone else. Every day people are quitting, every day people start, every day people don't manage to do more than 1 or 2 videos. Another great video I saw with Ali Abdaal was with Jess Su, who used to be like ex-Googler. And he's talking about, he had all this sort of Google staff that were kind of talking to him about being a YouTuber. And I think he spoke to like 37 people. But guess how many of those took action? Only one. And that person kind of had the business they wanted to work in. So the other thing is, don't think like everyone's going to do this. Like sometimes you see YouTube and think, oh my God, there's so many people on there. But no, there is so much opportunity. Another thing is that I know I was always looking for that hack, that shortcut, that tactic will always kind of that make me do really well. But here's the truth, and that is that there is no shortcuts, or rather the shortest way is just to do the work and go down that dip and that long path. The best way to think about this is like, you know, imagine you have like a mountain, and the best way to go over the mountain is just to go up it step by step and then come down it step by step. But you know, if you're looking for some hack and you're trying to go around the mountain, trying to go through the mountain, you know, it's just gonna like waste time in the long run. And the skills you're gonna learn by going up that mountain, that's what's gonna kind of set you up for success long term. Even if your particular channel doesn't work or fails, you're gonna build like valuable skills that way. Success is the hard work. You know, what I used to think was, oh, there's got to be an easy way to do this, there's got to be a hack. And what I've realized is that you just got to make the videos and just keep posting stuff out there. I don't need another training course, another video to watch. That's the best way to do it. So how do you actually survive the dip while you're in it? How do you actually kind of make it through? And something that I mentioned earlier is like, you need your why. You need to have a reason. Why are you doing this? You know, it might be because you want to make some extra income as well. What do you want to do with that income? It's not just about money. You know, do you want to help your family? You just want to like spread the news about something that you're really passionate about. Is there family? Is there your parents? It could be like a whole bunch of stuff. And there's just going to be a long period where, you know, in this dip where you're probably not going to see much results or money or success. So how can we get through that? And honestly, one of the really good things to think about is, what is your why? What is the reason? You know, I've heard reasons of people wanting to get out of debt, people that wanting to do something for their family, for their parents, people that are really ill. And this is just something that they love doing and they kind of see it as a way to kind of support themselves. But another thing that will help you kind of get through the dip is just by making those like little improvements. You know, some days you just make a tiny 0.0001% improvement, and you know, it's generally microscopic, but you know, that counts and all of that builds up. There's a very famous version of just getting 1% better each day. You know, and it doesn't matter if you get less than that, but all of it compounds. You know, you're not trying to just win this year, you're trying to win the long term. Or another quote I love is from Bill Belichick, who was like Tom Brady's coach in the New England Patriots, the American football team. And he was like, you know, talking about your job is just to have a good day today, tomorrow have another good day, and then have another good day, and then string a whole bunch of good days. And that's how you can kind of get through the dip. So just by taking it one day at a time. You know, the dip isn't asking you, are you talented? It's asking, will you keep showing up when nothing is happening? 99% of success, honestly, is just turning up every day. And also, you know, here's a guarantee, you will underestimate how long it takes to get going. You know, everyone does. It's just the law of nature. The dip is where you kind of build the product, the systems, the skills, all of that stuff that's setting you up for the future. The dip is also where you get to try a bunch of stuff, you know, very cheaply while nobody's watching. So the best way to prepare for the dip is, one, make it easy. I mean, Atomic Habits talks about this a lot. Number 2 is kind of celebrate every win. You know, every time you post a video, anytime you post something, celebrate anytime you get like a bunch of subscribers. Number 3 is just kind of lean into it and just kind of accept that, you know, it's going to take time. This is what we're looking at for a good few years. The number 4, which I think is the most important thing, is just to have this bounce back protocol. So it's just bouncing back. You will fail. There'll be days where you won't do it. There'll be days where something happens, or something happens in your life, or you're just not in the mood and you had a bad day. Just get back on it the very next day, and don't be so hard on yourself. Just be really kind to yourself so you get back onto it as soon as possible. But here's the plot twist as well, which is that winners quit all the time. They just quit the right thing, strategically, not emotionally. So ask yourself honestly, you know, are you being called to this thing? You know, with YouTube, it's just something I feel like I have to do. I want to do, I want to build it up. And imagine like if I had unlimited money, I would still want to do YouTube. Yeah, one good thing to think about, which I've read, is just about, you know, find the good hard. You know, find something that's hard that is good, something that you want to get good at, but not the bad hard, something that you're spending ages, years or whatever doing that you don't really want to do. Good hard energizes you, even when it hurts, whereas bad hard just drains you. And there's an opportunity cost. You know, every year you've spent doing something that you don't really want to do is like another year just kind of being wasted. And another really good thing Seth Godin talks about is if you can't make it through the dip, then don't start at all. There's no point starting it. If you hit the dip doing something, so for example, I'm doing YouTube, but if it was some other sort of thing, like I don't know, I was doing like this dropship business, this Amazon business, you know, there's no point doing it in the dip. I want to focus. This takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. So I want to focus it on something that is really important to me and something that I want to do. But another thing you might be thinking, well, you're not sure what you want to do. Well, just try things out. And I love this book called Tiny Experiments by Anne-Marie Lecoeur. And I think that's how you pronounce her name. But yeah, that's really good. Just talks about try things out for 3, 4 days, 5 days, and then tweak it. Is it working? Is it not working? Then try something else and try a little bit. You don't have to have these like year-long commitments like how most people do for New Year resolutions. So before you commit to anything, look for the dip, because not every hard thing is a dip. Some hard things are what Godin calls a cul-de-sac. So a cul-de-sac is something that, you know, you're going to spend a lot of effort, but it doesn't kind of really get anywhere. And, you know, you're not really kind of seeing any sort of results. And this could be some sort of project or some sort of company or anything like that. And it's at times like this that you just need to quit. Whereas a good dip is something that gets you excited, you get down, and then it kind of just compounds. So this is what's known as a good dip. Another thing I see people doing is just trying to be good at everything. You know, for example, for me, I was like trying to post on every single platform, and oh my God, it was just getting like too much and too overwhelming. And what Seth Godin talks about is you can't survive 5 dips at the same time. So try things out and see what sticks. And this brings us to one of the key things from the book, which is what can you be the best at? You can't beat someone that's obsessed with doing that thing. Like Cristiano Ronaldo, who's like, you know, amazing footballer. He's like 41 now, he's like a billionaire, but he was still playing football and recently just had the World Cup, and like, you know, he was playing in that, which is like, you know, he loves it, he's obsessed with it. It's gonna be very hard to beat someone like that. I also know like Dyson, who makes like the Hoovers and things like that, you know, he's really obsessed with making really good products, and that's what you want to do. You want to find something that you can kind of really get into, and you know, it might take time, you might have to experiment and see what works and what you don't like. But here's the thing that is really important to understand. Once you know about the dip, the results are inevitable. Also, as Muslims as well, you know, we make a lot of prayers as well, and du'as, as we say in Islam. So that's a very important aspect of it as well. But you know, if you think about the gym, if you show up every day and you work through the boring months, you know, within a year or whatever, you're going to do well. You know, you're going to have a really good body, you're going to be fit. You know, it's not a maybe, it is like inevitable. It's just how things work. If you put the work in, then you will get the results. So here's my question for you. Which dip are you in right now? You know, drop it in the comments. You know, it could be a business, content, a skill. And I generally read them. And honestly, knowing other people are in the dips also kind of helps everyone. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And inshallah, I will see you in the next one.